Hello, class. My name is Jermaine Brown, and I am with John Esposito and Nicholas King. Today, I'll be analyzing burnout as a leadership challenge, drawing on concepts from our courses and current research into workplace leadership. If you do not know what burnout is, I'm going to fill you in on it. Burnout is defined as a psychological response to stress that includes three elements: emotional exhaustion, physical and/or emotional detachment, and reduced personal accomplishments. In other words, burnout happens when job demands consistently exceeds the resources people have to cope. I believe we have all experienced something like this before. The major causes are important to understand: work overload, unclear job expectation, lack of control, insufficient rewards or recognition, poor leadership, and work-life imbalance. Each of these factors chips away at energy and resilience until exhaustion becomes chronic. The American Psychological Association highlights just how costly burnout can be. A 57% increase risk at workplace absence lasting more than 2 weeks, a 180 increase risk of developing depressive disorders, and an 84% increase of type 2 diabetes, and a 40% increased risk of hypertension. These aren't just numbers. They show that burnout is not just about being tired or stressed. It has a serious and physical and mental health consequence, but the ripple effect extends beyond individual. At the individual level, employees must experience chronic stress, anxiety, depression, physical health problems, withdrawal from work, and, in severe cases, an increased risk of substance abuse or even suicide. At the organizational level, burnout looks different, but is just as damaging. We see a higher turnover and absentees. We see presentees, which is when our employees are physically at work, but are very disengaged and unproductive. I've had that before. I will be a witness of that. Moral declines, productivity shrinks, and the company reputation can take a huge hit if burnout becomes widespread. That just means everyone is not doing anything. So burnout isn't simply a personal wellness issue. It's a performance and a substantial challenge that organizations cannot afford to ignore. Now, here's a crucial point. Burnout becomes truly dysfunctional when job demands consistently exceeds an individual's coping responses. And this is exactly where leadership comes in. Leaders are in a position to either mitigate this stress or intensify it. Good leadership can protect employees by setting clear examples and clear expectations, providing adequate resources, recognizing contribution, and even supporting work-life balance. On the other hand, poor leadership can accelerate burnout by ignoring the warning signs, demanding more with less, or even failing to give employees a sense of control and recognition, because then we don't feel like doing anything. And this raises a very critical question we should all be considering as future leaders. Wonder what that question could be. What I'm gonna tell you. That question is, how can leaders prevent burnout and still maintain a high performance in fast-paced industries? Because ultimately, the way leaders respond to this challenge determines whether burnout becomes a destructive force in their organization or whether it can be managed in a way that protects both people and performances.
Picking up from what we just heard from Jermaine, when we think about burnout, leadership style becomes one of the most powerful influences on whether it worsens or improves. As Griffin explains in our textbook, leadership shape the environment that determines how employees handle pressure. So, in other words, burnout is often less about the workload itself and more about how people are led through it. Griffin highlights several leadership styles that directly affect employees' well-being. The first one that I'm going to be talking about is transactional leadership. It emphasizes structure, performance targets, and rewards or penalties. It's great for short-term results, but it can really cause burnout over time because it focuses on compliance rather than engagement. The second is transformational leadership. It actually does the opposite. It reduces burnout by inspiring employees through a shared vision and meaningful goals. So when people see their purpose in their work, they're less likely to feel drained. So the last one is servant leadership. It takes it even further by putting employee growth and well-being at the center. So servant leaders build trust and community, which reduces the isolation and stress that often fuel burnout. So, as Griffin reminds us, leadership isn't just about directing performance, it's about creating the emotional climate that determines whether employees thrive or wear out. Now that we've connected leadership to burnout, Griffin's motivation theory helps us understand why employees disengage. So Herzberg's two-factor theory is that hygiene factors like job security, salary, and safe conditions really reduce dissatisfaction, while motivators like recognition and achievements create satisfaction. When leaders ignore hygiene factors, employees feel really unappreciated and unsupported, prime conditions for a burnout. The self-determination theory is linked to the intrinsic motivation. It says that people need autonomy. They need competence and relatedness to stay engaged. When leaders micromanage, limit growth opportunities, or fail to build connections, those needs aren't met, and burnout really takes a hold on a person. Together, these theories show that when motivation drops, burnout fills the space left behind. On an individual level, burnout causes exhaustion and disengagement, but Griffin emphasizes it also harms the organization itself. When burnout spreads, companies experience higher absenteeism and more turnovers, lower job satisfaction and commitment, and also reduced creativity and innovation. Over time, this erodes organizational effectiveness and damages reputation. And it really shows that burnout isn't just a personal issue, it's a leadership problem. So, what can organizations actually do to prevent burnout? They could redesign the job. So adjust roles and workloads to balance demands and autonomy, giving employees more control. They could also have flexible work arrangements, so hybrid or remote or even compressed schedules, allowing people to balance personal and professional responsibilities. They could also create a employee wellness program which offers counseling and mental health days or wellness partnerships reinforce that leadership values well-being as much as productivity. These approaches align with Griffin's points that reducing stress requires both organizational structure changes, and supportive leadership behavior. So, in short, effective leadership and thoughtful structure can transform burnout from an inevitable outcome into a preventable challenge. Griffin's work makes it very clear that leaders who inspire, empower, and care for their people build not only stronger teams, but stronger organizations. And with that foundation in mind, we will now talk about digging a little deeper into how these leadership concepts translate into world strategies organizations can use to sustain motivation and performance.
So John just walked us through structural solutions. But now the question is, how do we connect those leadership styles Griffin mentioned in our text, as well as Jermaine earlier in the presentation? One of the most powerful approaches is transformational leadership. Transformational leaders do three big things to prevent burnout. Firstly, they articulate a clear and inspiring vision. Next, they act as role models, setting the tone for what behavior looks like, even at entry-level positions. And lastly, they show individualized consideration. They don't treat employees as just a group of workers, but as unique people with different needs and strengths that can grow our organization. Another approach is servant leadership. Now, servant leaders flip the traditional hierarchy on its head. Instead of the employees serving the leader serves its employees. That means prioritizing its employees' development, building trust with employees, and creating an environment where people feel genuinely supported. Now, there's a connection here. No matter the style we're talking about, there's one key solution that always rises to the top, and that is communication. When our leaders keep communication open and transparent, they cut down on the uncertainty and fear that fuels burnout in the first place. When employees understand the why behind leaders' decisions, when they feel safe to speak up, when leaders actively listen, trust grows in the organization. And that trust is what keeps our people from burning out. If my team was to lead an organization, these methods would be at the heart of our mission. Our mission would be to create a workplace where people can perform at their best without sacrificing their well being or home life. We would design structures, strategies, and a culture that balances innovation, productivity, and most importantly, our employees' health. Because long-term success has to be has to include sustainability for both the organization and its people. My team's vision goes a step further. We would aim to build a future of work where burnout is replaced with balance, resilience, and purpose for our employees. In this future, our organization would thrive, not because our people are overworked or overproducing, but because employees are empowered, motivated, and supported to do meaningful work for our organization. And so, in closing, leadership and motivation are not just about driving performance or running for profit, they're about taking care of our people. Burnout is a signal to leadership. It's telling leadership it needs to shift before we cannot turn the ship around. By applying transformational and servant leadership, supported by our strong motivational strategies and thoughtful structure solutions, our leaders can create a workplace that is both high performing and truly sustainable. If our culture does not shift and people continue to burn out, we may not be able to turn the ship around. I thank you for your time. and have a wonderful day.